Joining me now is Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley. He is the ranking member on the Senate Budget Committee and participated in both this week's protests and Senate Democrat speeches last night. Senator, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, it is really fantastic to have you. Let's start with what we saw overnight. You and your fellow Senate Democrats holding the floor open, making speeches against Russell Vought's nomination to head OMB. He is still expected to be confirmed later today. What were you hoping to accomplish with those speeches, and did you do it?
Well, we want America to understand how dangerous he is. He believes in an imperial presidency where the president is king, laws are just suggestions, and the Constitution is irrelevant. And he said he doesn't care what the Supreme Court said, that Trump will do what he wants, and hopefully they'll have a case before the court, and the court will make a different decision than it did in the past. He also wants to traumatize government workers and to engage in a massive strategy of impoundment, which we have seen us put the nation into chaos right now because Russell Vought's plan is already at work.
Let me read you a little bit of what you have said specifically about Mr. Vought. You've called him a, quote, threat to democracy, a white nationalist, probably the most dangerous man in America. Senator, do you stand by those comments? And if so, what, if any, actions are you prepared to take to stop his agenda?
Well, he certainly has proudly described his role as he puts it, the term is Christian nationalist. And I do stand by him being dangerous, more dangerous than Tulsi Gabbard, more dangerous than Hegseth in defense. And the reason why is in those positions, there will be deputies who will moderate their incompetence. But Russell Vought is very competent, and his ideas are very radical. And for him to say that the Supreme Court decided that they were backing the vision of the Constitution, where Congress decides what funds go to what programs, but that he doesn't care, and he's going back to the president deciding what funds to go what programs. Once you say the laws are just suggestions and the Constitution doesn't matter, and the Supreme Court's previous decisions are irrelevant, then what you have is you've breached the boundary between a democracy, that is a republic, where you have one body making the laws and a different body implementing them, and you've consolidated power into the president in an autocracy. And that is, of course, what Trump wants, but it's not what our nation is, and it's extremely dangerous to our vision. And now, of course, to have Elon and his team of Muskies proceeding to try to get into all the data and all the agencies, that's extraordinarily scary on a whole different level.
Well, and I guess the big question is, Senator, what exactly can Democrats do to stop what you are characterizing as undemocratic behavior? I know that some of your Democratic colleagues are suggesting they would actually be willing to shut down the government over the next funding deadline over what they see happening inside federal agencies. Is that something that you would support doing?
Well, it wouldn't be Democrats shutting down the government. It would be Republicans shutting down the government. In other words, if they're going to continue on a non-constitutional course, we're not going to help them address the debt limit. We're not going to help them pass a continuing resolution. And so that is our power, and our power is our voice. Our power is our action on the floor, as we did going through the night for 30 hours. Our power is our refusal to allow the Budget Committee to be able to confirm or send Russell Vought's nomination to the floor, and doing it in a secret, private setting off the floor of the Senate, rather than having it in a public setting where senators could share their ideas. So we boycotted that gathering and held a press conference instead. If senators aren't even going to talk to each other to share their interpretations of how bad he is, that's just ramrodding him through, and really a violation of the Senate process. So we're just looking at every tool we have to carry this fight, because this is really this breaching of the norms of law and the Constitution are a constitutional crisis. And it's not a military coup, but it is an authoritarian administrative coup, and we have to treat it as the attack on our nation and its vision that it is.
And I hear you saying it would be Republicans who would bear responsibility if the government were to shut down. But just to be very clear, would you vote against a bill to keep the government open out of protest for what you're seeing unfolding?
If the bill is going forward in order to let Trump continue this unconstitutional process, then absolutely I would vote against it.
Okay. I want to play you some of my conversation with New Mexico Democratic Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury. This was yesterday. Take a listen. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
We have to stop him, and that's why the court strategy is most important at the present moment. As members of the House of Representatives, we don't have standing in Congress to bring many of the suits that would actually stop these activities.
President Trump and Elon Musk are moving so quickly with these moves to gut some of these government agencies. Can the courts keep up with what is happening at the White House right now, given the rapid pace?
I mean, they're not at the present moment.
So, Senator, is she correct? Is the legal system incapable of keeping up with what President Trump, Elon Musk, the pace of what they're doing? And is it therefore not necessarily the best course to try to have oversight over them?
Well, they certainly are a very important piece of the protection of our Constitution because they call the balls and strikes. Now, sometimes they wander into going further than that. For example, the Supreme Court was given the question of whether the president is immune from prosecution for crimes committed while he's in office. And they said, yes. That's nowhere in our Constitution. They made that up completely, which is actually what Trump is counting on, is a court that will make something else up, which is that the president has the power to control what funds go to what programs, even though the Constitution says the separation of powers prevents that. So this is the courts will help in blocking some things, but as they move up through the process, will Trump and his team actually even pay attention? When someone like Russell Vought is the chief engineer of the Trump train and is saying, ignore the outcomes of the court, well, we have a big problem about the courts being effective. And look right now, the court said you have to stop this illegal shutdown of payments. And what's happening is all across the country, people are still shut out of payments. So they haven't responded to what the court has said. So the courts are important. But they are not the only story here. We have to use the legislative branch in every way we can.
Senator, very quickly, I just want to put up some remarks obtained by CBS News. This is Marco Rubio, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, talking to embassy staff in Guatemala. He's talking to them about the foreign aid cuts. He says we're going to continue to provide foreign aid and to be involved in programs, but it has to be programs that we can defend. It has to be programs that we can explain. It has to be programs that we can justify. Otherwise, do we endanger foreign aid? This is not about politics, but foreign aid is the least popular thing government spends money on. What's your reaction to that, Senator?
Well, the way that the executive exercises its influence is to put forward a budget and tell us what they'd like to see funded, but they don't get to decide what's funded. And once we pass into law funding for different programs, it's their responsibility, their constitutional responsibility to carry that out. So they have a lot of influence, and the president could even veto a bill if he doesn't like the way the funds are allocated. Certainly presidents have done that. What they can't do, though, is take a bill which says, this amount of money goes to this program and this amount goes to another program, but you know what? We're going to ignore that and just fund the things we want. So that is the line. It's the Congress that decides, and it's the president who executes.